My name is Colleen, and at 52 years old, I thought I knew what unconditional love meant. I believed that being a mother was my greatest achievement, my whole identity wrapped up in caring for my son Marcus. Every sacrifice I made, every dream I set aside, felt worth it, because I was building something beautiful, something lasting. But sometimes the people we love most can say words that shatter everything we believed about ourselves. Sometimes, those words force us to make choices we never imagined possible. Before I tell you what happened that changed my life forever, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. You will not believe what I discovered about my own son that night. 24 years of my life had been devoted to one person, my son Marcus. From the moment he was born, I made every decision with him in mind. When his father walked out, when Marcus was just 3 years old, I promised myself I would be enough for both of us. I would be his mother, his father, his biggest supporter, his safe place in the world. I worked double shifts as a night manager at the downtown Marriott, sleeping only a few hours during the day, so I could be awake when Marcus came home from school. While other mothers complained about their teenagers, I treasured every moment. When Marcus played baseball in high school, I never missed a game, even if it meant leaving work early and losing pay. When he needed money for prom, I worked overtime for 2 months straight. Our small 2-bedroom apartment on Maple Street was nothing fancy, but I kept it spotless. Marcus's room was my pride and joy. I had saved for months to buy him the gaming setup he wanted for his 18th birthday. His walls were covered with every achievement certificate he had ever earned, every photo from every school event. I treated that room like a shrine to the boy I had raised. When Marcus graduated from community college 6 months ago with his associate degree in business, I cried tears of pure joy. No one in my family had ever gone to college. I had dropped out of high school when I got pregnant, but Marcus was going to have opportunities I never had. I paid every penny of his tuition by working extra shifts and eating nothing but peanut butter sandwiches for months. But lately, something had changed between us. Marcus seemed distant, almost embarrassed by me. When I would ask about his job at the electronics store, he would give short answers. When I suggested we watch a movie together like we used to, he would say he had plans. I told myself it was normal, that he was just becoming an independent adult. I convinced myself that our bond was too strong to be broken by anything. The apartment felt so quiet without his constant presence. I found myself cleaning his room, even when it was already clean, just to feel close to him. I would fold and refold his laundry, organize his closet, anything to feel useful, to feel needed. Deep down, I knew I was holding on too tightly, but he was all I had. He was my whole world, my entire reason for existing. I had given up everything for Marcus. I had no close friends because I never had time to maintain relationships. I had no hobbies because every spare moment was spent on him. I had no romantic relationships because no man wanted to compete with my devotion to my son. I had no career ambitions because my job was just a way to provide for Marcus. Looking back now, I can see how completely I had erased myself to make room for his life. 3 weeks ago, Marcus called me at work to tell me he was bringing his girlfriend home for dinner. Her name was Jessica, and he had been dating her for 2 months. This was the first time he was introducing her to me, and I was thrilled. I immediately started planning the perfect evening. I spent my entire paycheck that week buying ingredients for Marcus's favorite meal: herb-crusted salmon garlic, mashed potatoes, and green bean almondine. I bought flowers for the table candles to make the apartment feel more elegant, and a nice bottle of wine, even though I rarely drank. I cleaned the apartment from top to bottom, polished every surface until it gleamed. I took the afternoon off work, something I never did, to prepare everything perfectly. I wanted Jessica to see that Marcus came from a loving home, that he had a mother who cared deeply about him. I imagined us becoming close, maybe going shopping together, me helping plan their wedding someday. When Marcus walked through the door with Jessica that Friday evening, my heart soared. She was beautiful, tall and blonde, with perfect makeup and an expensive-looking dress. I had put on my nicest outfit, a navy blue dress I had bought for Marcus's graduation, and spent an hour on my hair and makeup. But from the moment Jessica stepped into our apartment, I could see her taking everything in with critical eyes. She smiled politely when I greeted her, but the smile never reached her eyes. During dinner, she barely touched the food I had spent hours preparing. When I asked about her job at the marketing firm, she gave short professional answers, as if I was interviewing her, rather than trying to get to know her. I found myself talking too much, trying to fill the awkward silences. I told stories about Marcus as a little boy, how he used to bring me flowers he picked from the neighbor's garden, how he once tried to make me breakfast in bed and nearly burned down the kitchen. With each story, I could see Marcus sinking lower in his chair, his face getting redder with embarrassment. Jessica laughed at my stories, but it was the kind of laugh that felt forced polite. When I showed her the photo albums of Marcus growing up, she flipped through them quickly, making appropriate comments, but clearly wanting to move on. I could feel the evening slipping away from me, but I did not know how to fix it. After dinner, Marcus and Jessica retreated to his room. They said they wanted to watch a movie on his laptop. I felt a stab of hurt that they did not want to watch something in the living room with me, but I told myself to give them space. I busied myself with cleaning up the dinner dishes, trying to make as little noise as possible so they could enjoy their movie. As I stood at the kitchen sink washing dishes, I could hear their voices through the thin walls of our apartment. At first it was just murmured conversation, and I tried not to listen. But then their voices became clearer, and I found myself frozen at the sink, unable to move, unable to stop hearing what they were saying about me. The first words I heard clearly were Jessica's, "Your mom is really sweet, but she seems kind of lonely." I smiled as I scrubbed a plate, thinking maybe I had misjudged her. Maybe she did understand how much I loved Marcus. But then, Marcus's voice cut through me like a knife. "She is lonely. It is pathetic, actually. She has no life of her own whatsoever." I stopped scrubbing my hands, frozen in the soapy water. Surely I had misheard him. "I mean, I get that she loves me," Marcus continued, "but it is suffocating sometimes. She acts like I am her whole reason for living. It is embarrassing." Jessica laughed, and the sound made my stomach drop. "I noticed that. The way she was showing me all those baby pictures like you were still 5 years old. And this apartment, it is like a shrine to you." "I know," Marcus said, and I could hear him moving around the room. "Sometimes I wish she would just disappear and let me live my life. She makes everything about her and how much she has sacrificed for me. It makes me feel guilty for wanting my own life." My legs felt weak. I gripped the edge of the sink to keep myself upright. This could not be happening. This could not be my Marcus, my sweet boy, saying these things about me. "She does not even have any friends," Marcus continued. "She works at that hotel job and comes home and just waits for me to pay attention to her. It is honestly kind of pathetic. I love her, but I wish she would get a life." "That is really hard," Jessica said, her voice sympathetic, but not in the way I had hoped. "My mom has her book club and her garden and her volunteer work. She has her own identity. Your mom seems like she only exists to be your mom." "Exactly," Marcus said. "And the worst part is, she thinks we have this amazing relationship. She has no idea how suffocating she is. I cannot even bring you here without her making it all about her and how excited she is to meet you." I felt tears streaming down my face, but I could not make a sound. I could not let them know I was hearing this. "She means well," Jessica said, but her tone suggested she was just being polite. "I know she means well," Marcus replied, "but sometimes I fantasize about what it would be like if she just was not here. If I could have my own place, my own life without her constantly needing me to validate her existence. She has made me her whole world, and it is a terrible burden." The plate slipped from my numb fingers and crashed into the sink. I held my breath, waiting to see if they had heard, but their conversation continued. "Maybe you could talk to her," Jessica suggested. "Tell her you need more space." "I have tried," Marcus said. "But she gets this hurt look in her eyes, and then I feel guilty. It is easier to just avoid being here as much as possible. That is why I spend so much time at your place." I stood there for what felt like hours, listening to them discuss me like I was a problem to be solved, a burden to be managed. Every word felt like a physical blow. 24 years of love, 24 years of sacrifice, and this was how my son really felt about me. When they finally went quiet, probably watching their movie, I finished the dishes in complete silence. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the plates. I kept replaying Marcus's words over and over. Sometimes I wish she would just disappear and let me live my life. I went to my bedroom and closed the door softly. I sat on my bed in the dark and cried as quietly as possible. Everything I thought I knew about my relationship with my son crumbled in the space of that conversation. I was not his beloved mother. I was his burden, his embarrassment, his problem. The next morning, Marcus and Jessica left early. Marcus gave me a quick hug and said thank you for dinner, acting like nothing had happened. Jessica smiled and said it was nice to meet me. They both seemed perfectly normal, completely unaware that I had heard every devastating word. After they left, I stood in my empty apartment and looked around with new eyes. Marcus was right. It was a shrine to him. Every surface held photos of him, awards he had won, mementos from his childhood. There was nothing in this apartment that belonged just to me, nothing that reflected my own interests or dreams. I walked to my bedroom and looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. When had I become this person? When had I stopped being Colleen and become just Marcus's mom? I could barely remember who I used to be before he was born. I had given up everything to raise him, and now he saw that sacrifice as pathetic and suffocating. But as I stared at my reflection, something shifted inside me. If Marcus wanted me to disappear, if he thought his life would be better without me constantly needing his validation, then maybe I should grant his wish. Maybe it was time for me to find out who I was when I was not trying to be the perfect mother. I walked to my small desk and pulled out my bank statements. I had been living so frugally for so many years, working overtime to pay for Marcus's college and save for his future, that I had accumulated more money than I realized. I had nearly $30,000 in savings money I had intended to help Marcus buy a house someday. Money he did not even know existed. For the first time in 24 years, I started thinking about what I wanted instead of what Marcus needed. I had always loved the ocean, but we had never taken vacations because every penny went toward Marcus's future. I had always wanted to live somewhere quiet and peaceful, but I stayed in our cramped apartment because it was close to Marcus's school and job. I spent the day researching small coastal towns online. I looked at rental properties, job opportunities, places where a woman could start over completely. I found myself drawn to a small town in Oregon called Harmony Bay. The photos showed a peaceful community right on the ocean, with a lighthouse, small shops, and friendly-looking people. I called the real estate office in Harmony Bay and spoke with a woman named Ruth about a small cottage for rent just 2 blocks from the beach. The rent was less than what I was paying for our apartment here. Ruth was warm and welcoming, telling me about the local library that was always looking for part-time help, the book club that met every Thursday, the volunteer opportunities at the animal shelter. As I talked to Ruth, I felt something I had not felt in years: excitement about my own life. Not excitement about Marcus's achievements or Marcus's future, but genuine anticipation about what my life could look like. That evening, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible just 24 hours earlier. If Marcus wanted me to disappear so he could live his life freely, then I would disappear completely. But I would not disappear into nothingness. I would disappear into a new life, a life that was entirely my own. I started making lists: what to sell, what to pack, what to leave behind. I researched how to break my lease, how to transfer my bank accounts, how to quit my job without raising suspicions. I was methodical and careful, the same way I had planned every aspect of Marcus's life for 24 years. The more I planned, the more liberated I felt. For the first time since Marcus was born, I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what someone else needed from me. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I decided I would leave when Marcus went away for the weekend with Jessica, which happened every few weeks. That would give me time to move out completely without having to explain myself or listen to his protests. If he truly wanted me gone, then I would make it easy for him. Over the next 2 weeks, I executed my plan with the same dedication I had once put into caring for Marcus. I started by selling things online, small items at first that Marcus would not notice: books, kitchen appliances. I rarely used clothes I had been keeping, just in case. I listed our dining room table and chairs on Facebook Marketplace, telling buyers they could pick them up while Marcus was at work. I sold the television from the living room, the coffee table, the decorative items that had made our apartment feel like home. With each item that left, I felt lighter, less tethered to a life that no longer fit me. The hardest part was going through Marcus's childhood belongings. I had saved everything: his first shoes, his favorite teddy bear, every art project he had ever made in school. I carefully packed the most meaningful items into 2 small boxes, things I thought he might want someday, when he had children of his own. But I left behind the shrine like displays, the photo collages, the dozens of participation trophies that had seemed so important at the time. I arranged for a furniture donation service to pick up Marcus's bed dresser and desk the day after I planned to leave. I would leave a note with instructions so he would know when they were coming. I cleaned out my closet ruthlessly, keeping only enough clothes to fit in 2 suitcases. Everything else went to charity. The most difficult task was closing my bank accounts and opening new ones that Marcus could never trace. I met with my bank manager and explained I was relocating for a new job. I transferred all my savings to a new account at a credit union in Oregon. I canceled my credit cards and applied for new ones with my new address. At work, I gave my 2 weeks' notice, telling my manager that I was moving to care for an elderly relative. My coworkers threw a small goodbye party, and I felt guilty accepting their good wishes when I was essentially vanishing from my entire life. But I reminded myself that Marcus wanted me gone, and this was the kindest way to grant his wish. I researched how to disconnect my phone service and get a new number in Oregon. I made arrangements to forward my mail to a P.O. box in Harmony Bay. I even looked into changing my name, though I decided that might be going too far. Colleen could have a new life without becoming someone entirely different. The most painful part was writing the note I would leave for Marcus. I wrote and rewrote it dozens of times. I did not want to be cruel or bitter, but I also did not want to pretend that I had not heard what he said. Finally, I settled on something simple and honest. Marcus, I heard what you said to Jessica about wishing I would disappear so you could live your life freely. I have decided to grant your wish. You no longer need to feel guilty or burdened by my love. I am starting a new life somewhere else, and I will not be contacting you. The furniture donation service will come Thursday at 10 a.m. for your bedroom furniture. I have left contact information for them. I hope you find the happiness and freedom you wanted. Love, Mom. 3 days before I planned to leave, Ruth from Harmony Bay called to tell me the cottage was ready. She had arranged for basic furniture to be delivered and had left a welcome basket with local information. Hearing her warm voice describe my new home made everything feel real in a way that both thrilled and terrified me. Marcus had mentioned he would be spending the weekend at Jessica's parents' house, meeting them for the first time. He seemed nervous about it, and my old instincts kicked in, wanting to reassure him and help him prepare. But I caught myself. His relationship with Jessica and her family was no longer my concern. He was an adult who wanted space from his suffocating mother, and I was going to give him all the space in the world. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my emotions as I loaded the last of my belongings into my car. The apartment looked strange and empty, nothing like the warm home it had been for so many years. I had left Marcus's note on the kitchen counter, where he would be sure to see it, along with the spare key and instructions for the furniture pickup. As I took one final walk through the rooms, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. This apartment had become a prison of my own, making a place where I existed only in relation to Marcus. Now it would become his space, the independent life he had wanted, without his pathetic mother hovering around him. I had already given notice to our landlord that Marcus would be taking over the lease. I told him I was moving to help care for a sick relative, and he had been understanding about transferring everything to Marcus's name. Marcus would discover this when he tried to contact me, another sign that his wish for independence had been completely granted. My car was packed with everything I owned, 2 suitcases of clothes, a box of personal documents, another box of photos and mementos that meant something to me rather than to Marcus and my laptop computer. It was shocking how little I actually possessed when I removed everything that belonged to Marcus or existed only for his benefit. Before leaving, I drove to the hotel where I had worked for the past 8 years. I had already cleaned out my locker and said my goodbyes, but I wanted to see the building one more time. This job had been nothing more than a way to provide for Marcus, but it had also given me a sense of purpose and routine. Starting over would mean finding new purpose, new routines, new ways to define myself. The drive to Oregon took 2 days. I had never driven so far alone before, and I found it surprisingly peaceful. I listened to music I had not heard in years, stopped at roadside diners to eat meals I chose for myself, rather than because they were Marcus's favorites, and slept in a small motel, where no one knew who I was, or why I was traveling alone. As the miles passed beneath my wheels, I felt layers of my old identity falling away. I was not Marcus's mom on this highway. I was not the night manager from the Marriott. I was just Colleen, a 52-year-old woman driving toward a new life by the ocean. When I finally reached Harmony Bay late Saturday afternoon, the sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange I had not taken time to appreciate in years. The town was even more beautiful than the photos had shown. Small houses with weathered shingles lined streets that led down to a rocky coastline. The air smelled of salt and possibility. Ruth met me at the cottage with keys and a genuine smile. She was about my age with graying hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She showed me around the small but charming space, a living room with windows facing the ocean, a tiny kitchen with everything I needed, a bedroom with a view of the lighthouse, and a small garden where the previous tenant had planted roses. "I hope you will be happy here," Ruth said as she handed me the keys. "This town has a way of helping people start over when they need to." I wondered if my need for a fresh start was that obvious, but Ruth's kindness felt genuine rather than pitying. After she left, I sat on the small front porch and listened to the sound of waves crashing against the rocks. For the first time in 24 years, I was completely alone, and instead of feeling lonely, I felt free. Back in our apartment, Marcus was discovering exactly what he had wished for. He returned from Jessica's parents' house Sunday evening, excited to tell me about the weekend and how well it had gone. He had been nervous about meeting them, but they had welcomed him warmly, and he felt like Jessica's relationship with her family showed him what healthy boundaries looked like. He called out when he opened the door, expecting me to be in the kitchen preparing dinner or watching television in the living room. Instead, he walked into an apartment that was completely empty except for the belongings in his room. His first thought was that we had been robbed. He ran through the rooms looking for signs of forced entry, reaching for his phone to call the police. But everything was too clean, too organized to be the result of a break-in. His room was untouched, but the rest of the apartment was stripped bare. Then he saw the note on the kitchen counter, written in my familiar handwriting. He read it once, then again, then a third time, as the reality of the situation sank in. I had heard everything he said to Jessica. I knew exactly how he felt about me, and I had decided to give him the independence he wanted. His first emotion was panic. He called my phone immediately, but it went straight to a message saying the number was no longer in service. He tried the hotel where I worked, but they told him I had quit 2 weeks earlier and moved away to care for a sick relative. He called the bank and discovered that all my accounts had been closed. Marcus spent the next several hours trying to find any trace of where I had gone. He called the few relatives we had, but no one had heard from me. He searched through my room for clues, but I had taken all my personal papers and left nothing behind that would indicate my destination. As the reality set in that I had truly vanished without a trace, Marcus's panic began to mix with guilt and regret. He remembered every word he had said to Jessica, how casually he had dismissed 24 years of love and sacrifice. He had gotten exactly what he said he wanted, but now that he had it, he realized how much he had lost. The apartment felt enormous and empty without my presence. There was no smell of dinner cooking when he came home from work. There was no one to ask about his day or worry when he was late. There was no one to do his laundry or keep the refrigerator stocked or remember to pay the utilities. Within a week, Marcus was struggling with the basic responsibilities of adult life that I had always handled quietly. He burned his first attempt at cooking dinner. He ran out of clean clothes because he had never learned to do laundry properly. He forgot to pay the electric bill and came home to a dark apartment. Jessica initially tried to be supportive, but she quickly became frustrated with Marcus's helplessness. She had assumed he was independent and capable, but she discovered that I had been managing every aspect of his life. When he asked her to help him figure out how to work the washing machine, she lost her patience. "You are 22 years old," she said. "How do you not know how to do laundry? What did you think would happen when you moved out?" Marcus could not explain that he had never planned to move out, that he had assumed I would always be there to take care of the practical details of life while he pursued his dreams. He had taken my support for granted, never realizing how much work it took to maintain a household. Within 2 weeks, Jessica was spending less time at the apartment. She was uncomfortable with Marcus's neediness and his constant complaints about everything being harder without his mother. When he suggested she could help him organize his life the way I had, she was offended. "I am your girlfriend, not your mother," she said. "I am not going to take care of you the way she did. That was not healthy for either of you." 3 weeks after I disappeared, Jessica ended their relationship. She told Marcus that he needed to figure out how to be independent before he could be in a healthy relationship with anyone. She said that his mother had done him a disservice by not teaching him to take care of himself, but that it was not her job to fix that mistake. Marcus was devastated. In the space of less than a month, he had lost both his mother and his girlfriend. The independence he thought he wanted felt like abandonment and isolation. He hired a private investigator to try to find me, but the man came back with nothing. I had covered my tracks too well. Sitting alone in the empty apartment night after night, Marcus began to understand what I had given up for him. He realized that I had not had any friends because I spent all my free time with him. He understood that I had worked jobs I hated to pay for opportunities he had taken for granted. He saw that I had made myself completely available to him at the cost of having any life of my own. For the first time, Marcus appreciated the magnitude of my sacrifice and the depth of my love. But this understanding came too late, after I was gone beyond his reach, leaving him to face the silence he had created with his careless words. 6 months after leaving everything behind, I was sitting on my front porch in Harmony Bay, watching the sunset paint the ocean in brilliant colors. The cottage had become a true home filled with things I had chosen for myself, rather than for someone else's comfort. I had found part-time work at the local library, a job that brought me joy rather than just a paycheck. I was surrounded by books and stories helping community members find information and resources. My co-workers were kind and interesting people who knew me as Colleen the librarian, not as anyone's mother. I had joined the Thursday evening book club that Ruth had mentioned, and I had made genuine friendships for the first time in decades. These women knew nothing about my past unless I chose to share it. They liked me for who I was in the present moment, not for my relationship to someone else. I had taken up watercolor painting, something I had always wanted to try, but never had time for when my life revolved around Marcus's schedule. I was not particularly talented, but I found peace in mixing colors and trying to capture the beauty of my new surroundings. I painted the lighthouse at different times of day, the boats in the harbor, the wildflowers that grew along the coastal paths. I volunteered at the animal shelter every Saturday morning, helping to care for cats and dogs who needed homes. There was something healing about providing comfort to creatures who asked for nothing more than basic kindness. The animals did not judge me or find me pathetic. They simply appreciated the love I offered. Most surprisingly, I had started dating. A man named David, who was recently widowed and also starting over in his 60s, had asked me to coffee after we met at the book club. We had been on several dates, taking walks along the beach, sharing quiet dinners, getting to know each other slowly. He was interested in my thoughts and opinions, not in what I could do for him. I had written many letters to Marcus over the months, but I never sent them. Writing helped me process my feelings and work through the grief of losing the relationship that had defined my life for so long. In these unsent letters, I told him about my new life, about the person I was becoming, when I was not trying to be the perfect mother. Sometimes I wondered if Marcus had learned anything from my disappearance. I hoped that losing me had taught him to value the people who loved him, to understand that relationships require appreciation and respect to survive. But my happiness no longer depended on his growth or his realization of what he had lost. I had learned that love does not require sacrifice of self. I had learned that being needed is not the same as being valued. I had learned that it is never too late to start over to discover who you are when you stop defining yourself through other people's needs. The hardest lesson was understanding that unconditional love does not mean accepting disrespect or dismissal. Love should enhance both people's lives, not diminish one person for the benefit of the other. My love for Marcus had been genuine and deep, but it had also been unbalanced and ultimately harmful to both of us. On quiet evenings like this one, sitting by the ocean with a book in my lap, and the sound of waves providing a peaceful soundtrack, I felt grateful for the painful gift Marcus had unknowingly given me. His wish for me to disappear had forced me to disappear from a life that was too small, too selfless, too focused on everyone else's dreams, but my own. I had vanished from the role of the devoted mother who had no identity beyond her child's needs. I had reappeared as a woman with her own interests, her own friendships, her own quiet happiness. The silence Marcus had created with his careless words had become a peaceful quiet that I filled with my own choices, my own voice, my own life. As the last light faded from the sky and the lighthouse began its nightly beacon across the water, I realized that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is to grant someone their wish completely, even when they do not understand what they are asking for. Marcus had wanted me to disappear, and I had. But instead of disappearing into nothingness, I had disappeared into a life that was finally truly my own. Have you ever heard words that completely changed how you saw yourself? Have you ever had to choose between holding on and letting go? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you in any way, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Do not forget to subscribe for more stories about finding the courage to start over at any age. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that it is never too late to choose yourself. May you find the strength to write your own story, whatever chapter of life you are in.